Can't get damn Instagram to work. So frustrating. Hope everybody is doing great. Just trying to make this son of a gun work, but it's just not. So if anybody's a big fan of Instagram and uses Restream, I would be so grateful for your tips and tricks about how to link that in. I'm doing all they tell me to do, but it's not working. But I'm here, and at least this is working. So I'm curious how the week's gone. Please feel free to put at any time your questions in the chat box, and I will do my best to answer them. We've had a bigger crowd recently, so it does get a little full, and it's hard sometimes for me to answer the questions right away. So just know I will do my best to try to get to them. I'm Kim at Curtin, the Wall Street Coach. I do this almost every Thursday in the neighborhood of 8 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank our sponsor, Centerpoint. I'm going to actually put a link for Centerpoint in the chat box. Centerpoint, I can't say enough good things about them, and just really, really admire how they treat their customers, obviously traders. And this is a special link that they gave me to share with you guys. So I hope you'll use it. It gives you a special offer in there as well. Hi, Tina. I'm so glad you're here. So good to have you. So good to have everybody. So this, live coaching is basically me coming in with topics that I think, I see traders struggle with, solutions, practices, steps to take if you're challenged in any way. And then I also, literally do live coaching. So anybody who wants to, have a topic addressed specifically, obviously it's on social media. So, use your discretion around what you're going to speak to. But, you can get across the gist of a challenge you're having and still get that across. And hopefully I can, be of value to you. So I'm glad you're here, Tina. And hi, BTO. I'm glad you're here too. So anyway, ultimately, what this is in service to, most of all, is to really show traders that they are not alone, that the challenges that you face individually are common among traders. And part of what I think is that, there's a tendency for traders to feel so isolated and kind of get really hard on themselves about what mistakes they make or emotionally getting triggered. And really what I hope you guys all walk away with is this sense of community, like you guys are all in it together, and to start to perhaps have a little bit less judgment on yourself, and to just see this journey as one that is increasing your consciousness, increasing your enlightenment, helping you to become not just a better trader, this journey you're on, but also a better person. So anywho, I'm so glad you're here, Daria. You're too sweet with that very, very sweet thing you just said. So thank you. And William, I'm glad you're here. If you could address imposter syndrome, super interested to hear your thoughts. William, I will take that on. That's a great topic, and I'm glad you spoke to it. And Derek, you're a doll. Hi, Cynthia. So glad you're here. All right, so imposter syndrome, that is a really, really fascinating dynamic. And it's really, I presume everybody knows what it is. It's that feeling of not being not having a right, so to speak, not being legitimate enough to be in a particular place. Could be with you feeling like, do I even belong here as a trader? And it can happen, in a collection of other environments as well. Relationships, being a parent, being the child of a parent, having kids, pretty much any place, like being a gardener, like it could be very innocuous, and it could also be at, top levels of industry or political office, right? All right, so Mars 3 says, is this the topic for tonight? Imposter syndrome. Mars 3, it's not so much the topic for the night. I usually come in with a handful of topics, but that was the question that William asked me to address. So I'm hopping in right there. I will hop into my topics if somebody doesn't put a inquiry in the chat right out of the gate. But he did, so I'm going to take that on. But each time, the topics really are the topics you guys want me to take on. I don't come in with a set agenda. I have things I can talk about always with me, but ultimately you guys dictate the agenda based on your questions. So hopefully that clears that up. All right, so imposter syndrome. The thing I do want to say about imposter syndrome, which was a complete shock to me when I first started coaching. I've been coaching now 18 years. I come out of finance. I was at the C-suite level for, just about a decade before I started to coach. And okay, BTOs has been following you since Steady Trade Labs for months now, profitable, but unsure if that may be I've improved or maybe luck. Any help? Okay, BTO, I'll take that on after this question about the imposter syndrome. So I'm at the C-suite level in finance, had worked there for 10 years. Obviously, that C-suite level, just in case that's not clear, is simply, CFO, CEO, COO. These are the people who lead the organizations. So that's, the top of an organization, so to speak. So being at that level for 10 years, I was always interacting with the people who were in charge, right? The bosses, so to speak, the top dogs, right? And when I started coaching, because I put my focus right from the get-go towards that level of person, I knew that I had worked with them for 10 years, could see that there probably were some places they self-sabotaged. So I thought, wait a minute, let me try to be a contribution to them. What surprised me, and this comes back to the imposter syndrome, when I started to work with C-suite level executives is, of course, in coaching, what happens? People tell you the deep truths, right? The things that are going on behind the scenes that I had not previously really been exposed to. I saw people in action. I may have had interactions with them, but to hear from those clients how much imposter syndrome was a part of their experience shocked me. I was stunned. I thought, oh, that only is happening to me or to those at the middle or bottom of the food chain, right? Like this probably doesn't happen with other executives. This probably doesn't happen with other people who are all at the top of the ladder, but I was so wrong. So why do I say that? I say that right out of the gate because I really want you guys to get that you can point to very few people who don't struggle at some point or another with imposter syndrome. It doesn't matter how much money they make, doesn't matter what their title is, doesn't matter how much money is in the bank, doesn't matter how much they've made as a trader. Unless a person is possibly a psychopath, which, they probably would not be experiencing any form of self-doubt, right? Even a complete narcissist, to be quite honest, has a very splintered sense of self. So, maybe a psychopath wouldn't have this struggle at all, but there's nobody I've met in 18 years, regardless of, their title, who hasn't had, some sort of experience with this. So I see this because it's part of being human. It's part of being, a person who can't help but, think, wow, maybe, there's that sense of I am not bringing enough to the table. And part of what I want to say about that is that on one hand, it's potentially a guardrail from hubris, right? Potentially a guardrail to keep, our sense of getting, potentially a little too cocky, a little too confident. And it can also get too blown up where it feels like we are never enough. And that is what I would say, William, is what you want to keep an eye out. And imposter syndrome often involves our inner gremlin, our inner critic. And that is what I would suggest to anybody here who struggles with imposter syndrome. I really want you to get curious about what puts you into that thought process. Likely it's self-talk that's coming from an inner saboteur, an inner gremlin, inner critic, right? These are all the same thing, but I'm just giving lots of different, names for it, because those names are how hopefully it begins to, become recognizable to you. At the end of the day, the more likely the quicker you recognize your inner critic, the quicker you recognize this inner saboteur is, in your head on a microphone, the quicker you get to unhook yourself from it. Inner critics, the biggest challenge with them is not recognizing that they are who you are listening to. It is so easy for an inner saboteur to convince all of us that it knows what's best for us. And, I think you all have heard me probably say multiple times how strong I recommend you consider reading Taming Your Gremlin, which is by Rick Carson, which P.S. Rick was on my podcast, maybe a year ago. I would strongly recommend you watch that interview if you haven't already, even if you get the book, even if you're diving into that book, because Rick's conversation, he speaks to it. He even, it's his book, this term, inner gremlin. He wrote it 50 years ago, guys, or 40 years ago. Like, this is a book that goes back, and it is probably the most recommended book. I'm a big reader. I read books all the time, multiple books at a time. I love books and fiction and nonfiction, but I have never recommended a book more than Rick's. And that, he describes it in my conversation as he is a monster of the mind. And one of the things that happens early on with people starting to pay attention for this voice and distinguishing it is the fact that it often, as you start to identify it, as you start to notice its tone of voice, as you start to gather the catchphrases, as you start to gather the situations that trigger it, you will also at some point hear your inner critic or critics, because rarely do we just have one, we have a busload of them. You will hear this, the inner critic will say to you, you would not be here where you are now without me, because, I'm the one who actually helped you be disciplined and dedicated. Like you'd be nowhere without me. As soon as you guys hear that, I want you to be like, son of a gun, there it is. Because that's what it wants you to think. It wants to keep its job. It is squatting in your head rent free all the time. And what I want is you to simply notice it. And that's what Rick repeats over and over again. So Cynthia says here, her inner saboteur is what I have been struggling with the most lately. Cynthia, I'm sorry to hear that. And I really hope did you get this book, Cynthia? And did you watch my conversation with Rick? Because this inner saboteur, and again, usually it's a bus load of them, they don't ever go away permanently. They are on the journey with us. Here's what Rick speaks to that's so simple and yet so profound. We're going to hear them, but the key is to not let them drive the bus, right? So you imagine a big yellow school bus, right? What does it hold? 70, 80 kids, right? Would you ever let that 10-year-old kid on the bus get behind the wheel? No, that would be incredibly dangerous. And yet, every time we potentially let that inner gremlin within ourselves drive our bus, drive our decisions, we are handing the wheel over to not a good driver. So this becomes potentially dangerous for all of us. And so, Cynthia, I am going to recommend you get that book. And I'm glad that you will watch the interview with Rick. A couple of things about that book. I'm actually going to just go grab it off my shelf. This, I would recommend, is a book that you want to get in paperback and possibly in audio. And why? Instead of a Kindle. Why do I say that? Because first of all, it's a short book, but here's the other reason. This is a huge paradigm shift for most people. It can be a little dense to kind of wrap your arms around. Part of why I like this book itself is because in the book, Rick has had an illustrator, draw these pictures to help us get a sense of what that inner critic, looks like, so to speak. So it kind of, the illustrations help all of us, me included, with trying to take it too seriously. Like, it's kind of serious, right? It's like serious as a heart attack. And it can become a little bit like, God, this is really hard to do. Like, I can hear you, Cynthia, you're saying, like, I'm not sure how to take control of it. Let me say this, you can't take control of it, at least initially. What has to begin is noticing when that gremlin is speaking. That is the first step of gremlin taming. Rick speaks to, and as you'll find in the book, there are questions at the beginning that are questions that seem simple, but you'll see is not that easy, or not that easy to answer. Like, what does the gremlin sound like? So, Cynthia, I'm just going to say right here, what does your gremlin sound like? There's usually a voice to it. There's usually sometimes it's like, gender free. It's just a voice, but usually it sounds like a man's voice or a woman's voice, an old person voice or a young person voice. Some people actually say it sounds like a parent of mine, or it sounds like a teacher or a former boss. But what I want to really underline is that voice actually is no longer that person. It may sound like, it may seem like an old parent or a grandparent or caretaker, but now it has become its own entity, so to speak. So, Cynthia, this is what I would say you want to do first, right? I would watch the podcast with Rick. I would get the book. I have the paperback of the book, And I also have the audio, because there are times when just listening to Rick help us see it. I've read this book, guys, 20 times. And of course, having him on my podcast, I wanted to read it again. So over 20 times, right? So I picked the book up again right before I interviewed him. And I had a whole bunch of other gremlins identified for myself. So like it's like we're all a work in process, not like we're done and that's it. All right, so Cynthia, not sure you can identify a voice, but I will keep notice of it. So here's the thing, Cynthia. Here's what I want to give you by way of flags to pay attention to. Here are the key words that you are listening to your gremlin. Are you guys ready? Would, should, or could. As soon as you hear those three words, it is not you talking to yourself. It is this inner critic. It is this hyper-criticizing entity that is making you feel shitty about yourself. So the bottom line is, if you're always feeling shitty about yourself, if you're stumbling into imposter syndrome, if you're constantly feeling like you're not enough, if you're unable to stick to your strategy, if you are constantly self-sabotaging or numbing yourself out with, your particular numbing agent of choice, you likely have a busload of gremlins, switching places to drive your bus right over the cliff. That is an evidence. All of that is evidence that a gremlin is got you hijacked, basically. All right, can you write it down, Kim, please? Could not read the title and the credit. Okay, sure. So taming. Let's see here. Taming your gremlin. That's the book. And what I would say is just put, let's see, Rick Carson is the author. Rick Carson. So look up Rick Carson on the Wall Street Coach podcast, and that you'll be able to, get it fully there. All right, so MC Trading, can you just give me 1 second to go back here to Eric had a question, I think, in service to this. BTO, stay with me. Let me just, finish this topic, please. But I will get to your question, I promise. All right, let's just see here. Okay, Eric said, define the reason why we sabotage is the hardest. They don't want to be identified. Shadow work and Jungian archetypes can help. Okay, gotcha. I thought there was a question there, but that's, gotcha. Yep, I agree. The simply notice is the best line in the book. And he does repeat it over and over again. And let me say something else about the simply notice line, is that one of my clients, actually, a couple of years ago, he tattooed on his arm, simply notice, because that catchphrase was his anchor. It became the most easy to anchor in as he began to realize that he was listening to his gremlins. So that's what I want you guys to start to do, is start to notice when you're listening to would, should, or could, when you're hearing a voice that makes you feel like garbage. Noticing, and look, this is not fun, guys. Like, may sound simple. It's not freaking easy. Like, a lot of times I will suggest to clients, I'm looking to see if I have one handy here. I will suggest to clients that they get themselves this kind of an index card, and literally every single time they hear a inner critic in their head, they do this, like write a hashtag, right? Like, oh, there he is again. Oh, there he is again. Like, doing that all day long is not fun, especially in the beginning, because you will find you have hundreds, if not thousands, of times that it's talking to you. But here's the thing, guys, you do that for a couple of days, besides the fact that you're going to be like so over it, what's going to happen is you are going to become absolutely in shock at the frequency of that or those gremlins consistently bossing your ass around, making you feel like garbage. So I really think, as painful as that process is, you got to do it, especially you, Cynthia, if you're having a hard time identifying what it's saying. All right, so MC Trading says, could it be said that imposter syndrome can stop one from thriving by making one doubt one's skills because one measures the knowledge solely in the speed of the profitability curve? I would say yes, and I am not so sure that's imposter syndrome as much as it could be, but it's possible, again, that sense of judgment about the profitability curve is a gremlin, right? So a gremlin is sort of behind the experience of imposter syndrome. But the reason I want to take your emphasis off imposter syndrome is because I want you to go back to the root. The root is the gremlin. The root is what that gremlin is saying to you. That is the place you want to get curious about, because imposter syndrome is one of a collection of things that the gremlin is kind of whispering in your ear about. And one of those things could be, you're not succeeding fast enough. I have to say, especially among traders less than 3 or 5 years old, like most of them are incredibly impatient with themselves. Most are measuring themselves up against completely impractical rulers, like impractical, like the expectations so many less than 5 years traders have are like out of this galaxy. Like, I love bodacious goals, guys. Nothing against bodacious goals, but what's today? Thursday? Some of the traders will be like, Kim, today's Thursday, and I'm going to do an Ironman this weekend. Like, would that be at all reasonable, guys? No. Like, oh, have you been training for the past 6 months or a year? Oh, you haven't? And you want to run Ironman this Saturday. And you want to win. Like, are you on drugs? But that is how a lot of traders look at their trading, look at their expectations for themselves are completely unrealistic. Now, think about that. If a gremlin has set you up with unrealistic expectations, you're going to consistently not meet them. How do you think you're going to feel about yourself most of the time? Not so good, not so good at all, right? And it's possible in that moment, you're going to think, oh, it's because I'm not good enough. No, it's because you're asking yourself to deliver at an Olympian level. The traders that have been at this for a decade or more, 2 decades, you're comparing yourself sometimes, and that's what you want to do, is get curious. Are you comparing yourself to traders who've been at it double, triple the amount of time you have? Oh, and what else? How many hours a week do you trade? A lot of beginner traders have another job, a full-time job, caretake for parents, kids, what have you. And again, this comparing is completely irrational, with not comparing apples to apples. You guys will be like, I'm going to compare my apple to, a can of pop. they aren't even the same. They're not, remember, I don't know if you guys ever watched Sesame Street, but it was Sesame Street on the electric company. It was like, one of these things is not like the other, and they put, a couple of things like furniture, and then they put a cat, and then when you're a kid, it was like a little game to help you recognize. A lot of times you guys are like looking at pieces of furniture and you're the cat and you're like, I can't believe that I don't have pillows. Like, no, you don't have pillows because you're not a couch. You just started. Like, I know it's a crazy metaphor. I probably just used it, but hopefully that helped. All right, let me just see here. All right, you're welcome, MC Trading. You're welcome, Matt Marsory. I hope I'm saying your name right, Marsory. Okay, good. Glad it's advice and impatience can even be in grappling. Absolutely true. All right, so please, BTO's question, which I want to go back to. Hopefully that answered the question about the Intercept tour. Hopefully this got you, Cynthia, at a minimum, if not a few other people, getting Rick's book, because it's so powerful. What else do I want to say? Oh, if you like this conversation, guys, if you feel this is serving you, I am going to, suggest you consider coming into my next group coaching. It's our third one. It launches on April 18th. It's Thursdays. It's going to be Thursdays. I think it's 7 or 8 o'clock p.m. That is the link. It is going to be a small group. This is the third one I've done. There's testimonials from traders, some traders who have done it on that page. So this is my sales pitch. Yeah, you like this? You want more intimate coaching with me? This small group is what I think would really serve you. So think about it. See if it would serve you. OSB, thank you. I'm glad you said that. And thank you for saying that. All right. So let's see. I want to get to BTO's question. MC Trading spot on. Kim, Eric, impatience instead of seeing the big picture ramp up and trend, remaining patient. Good job. You got it, MC Trading. All right. So BTO, let me go back to your question. Let's see. Again, if anybody has anything they want coaching on, please put it in the chat box. Please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to my Twitter, which is Kim and Curtin on X. Have a couple of X spaces coming up. We also just dropped a podcast with Stan Ivanov. We haven't promoted it yet. We'll be doing that soon. All right. So BTO is asking that the last 4 months, you are saying you've been profitable, but you're unsure if that you've improved or is it luck? So let's just ask you a couple of questions, BTO. I'm curious, do you keep, data? Like, do you journal? Like, what's different? Why have you been profitable these past 4 months? What is potentially different about how you're trading technically and emotionally? You spoke to like seeing some of my conversations on Steady Trade. So is it because some of the tools I've suggested you've implemented for yourself? Like that's what I'm looking for. Like something happened in these past 4 months. I don't think it could just be luck for 4 steady months, but it could be. Never say never. But I'm curious for yourself. As you look over these past 4 months, I want you to, as neutrally as possible, look at what the data says. What does the data say? What has changed? Have you been more disciplined sticking to your strategy? Have you been cutting your losses? Have you been more empathetic to yourself? Have you been, less attached to being wrong and not beating yourself up? Like, this is what every trader needs to be in tune to. If you are noticing that you seemingly are triggered, the key here, guys, is not to step into judgment, right? It's so easy to do that. Your gremlins sure as heck want you to do that. You want to instead step into curiosity, because when you step into curiosity, and let's not forget its twin that I want you to always take with you, it's not just curiosity, but neutrality. Why are those two important? Because if you are in this place of judgment with yourself and not neutrally observing yourself, you won't be able to potentially really see what is driving you. You won't be able to really see the trigger. And it's so easy to become judgmental of ourselves. I can't believe I did that again. What the hell's wrong with me? I have no discipline. What an idiot, right? That's normally the kind of self-talk that we'll have when we notice ourselves doing something that's costly, be it trading or anything. What I want you guys to get is that when you go into judgment about costly behavior of any sort, you go into a contraction. You go into resistance, right? Just think about how that self-talk would physically show up, right? What happens when you start to hear yourself or this gremlin, say to you, "Oh, you're such an idiot." You start to shrink. You start to feel not good. You start to experience shame, right? Shame is a contraction. Shame is a shrinking, right? You feel embarrassed in front of yourself, never mind somebody else. Again, if you're not a psychopath, right? There's not that many walking around, guys. We're pretty lucky, But yeah, there's a handful. So if you never feel shame, yeah, you're a psychopath. But that is not the collection of people in this room. Like there really aren't that many when you look at the stats. I'm not saying there's none, but most traders are not experiencing that. Most traders are experiencing incredible self-judgment, incredible self-judgment. And that is stopping you guys from being able to actually change because that judgment is keeping you from being able to understand and be able to identify what is being triggered in the first place. At the end of the day, what is it that you want to be able to do, right? You're doing something that's costly and now you don't want to do it anymore. Well, I had to take a sip. If you want it to change, you have to take a look at the behavior. But if you are coming in with a huge amount of judgment about that behavior, you can't really see it clearly. It's as if you are so distracted by the shame and the embarrassment and the anger that it prevents you from being able to actually be sort of like a scientist, like a private detective who is just like, I wonder what's going on here. I wonder what kicks this up for me. That is the best approach, guys. And it gives you a leg up at being able to stop it. All right, Cav on Trade says, I'm definitely a hoarder or an amasser and everything other than trading. Sometimes have trouble seeing it as real money. Cav, I'm going to actually suggest that I would find that very hard to believe that the hoarding and amassing isn't showing up somehow in the trading, only because yeah, it's fascinating because you say you're having trouble seeing it as real money. What might help? I'm going to speak specifically to that. And one of the things, and this, I think this was in Barbara Wilder's book, Money is Love, which is a very profound book. I don't think do I have that on my shelf? I don't know that I do. I'll look for it. But it's a very short book, less than 100 pages, guys. A radical book. This is not a standard book, but it was a life-changing book for me. So here's what I want to say, Kevin. I want you to, I don't know if you're willing to say, how, uh, if again, because your name is there, you may not want to say it, but I'm just going to put out a number, Kevin, and you can adjust it accordingly. But one of the ways that will help you get really connected to seeking his real money is to have a big fat cash load on you. So I'm going to suggest that you have, I'll give you a few numbers for you to pick from, or you can counter offer with another one. $5,000 on you, $10,000 cash on you. When you are walking around with $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 cash, hard to do for a guy. Like, we women have pocketbooks. We could stick it in a wallet, which I get for you possibly wouldn't work. And what I want you to really do is not spend any of your money for a particular period of time. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's a couple of months, but I want you to spend cash as often as you can. I get that that's hard with like auto bill pay, and so much of it is electronic, but that is part of why it's hard for you and a lot of people to be really connected to, their money, because they never have it in their hands. They never, experience it. But I'll tell you, when you start to have cash and you go to the market, right? Let's say your groceries are $300. When you put that $300 in the cashier's hands, it's real. It's like, this is real. I made that money and I'm spending that money. So that's what I want to suggest to you. But I am kind of curious, if you do start to have this like tactical connection to your money, I wonder if that might change. And I would get maybe this book, Money is Love, because there is sometimes this disconnect that happens to our money when we are living in the world of, all electronic. It becomes sort of less dense. It becomes less tangible. And so I would recommend you let it become tangible again. Also, just carrying around that kind of cash with you. And maybe this particular exercise, I'm trying to think, maybe I got it from a Gary Douglas book. There's a great, or it's another guy. I have to think of his name. He has a great book called, I think it's called The Trouble. Is it The Trouble with Money is Having Some? Something like that. Or is it The Trouble with Money is Not Having Some, or something to that effect? I can't remember this guy's name. It was a very interesting book as well. So all this to say, when you have a big, wad of cash on you, you will be present to it. For me, like when I did this exercise, I do have a purse with me all the time, a pocketbook. Let me tell you, I was present to my purse. Like if I went to a restaurant or I was sitting down to somebody's at lunch or something, that purse was not on the back of my chair. That purse was on my lap, because I was like, if this purse ever got stolen or a pickpocket guy came, or girl, right, it's gone. So that will kind of have you restore that tangibility. So let's see. And maybe it has to be $10,000, right? And maybe it has to be more, like whatever that lifestyle you're living at. But I want you to see if that doesn't shift that relationship to money being more dense and tangible. Good, Daria. I'm glad you think that might work. All right. So any questions? Anything you guys want? Oh, did we finish BTO? I'm not sure that we did we? You were so what I think, if I go back, what I'm suggesting, BTO, is that you get clear. I don't think you answered my question. That's what happened. I asked you a question and I didn't see the answer. So BTO, if you're listening to this afterwards, remember too that these are all recorded, guys. So, almost once a week for, I don't know, you guys tell me, have I been doing this 3 months, 4 months? Like, go back and listen to those episodes because the topics are always different because it's based off the chat. So do be sure to go back and listen if this is a value to you. Okay, BTO, this what I just wanted to say is I want you to track what did happen in this account of yours. I'm not saying it isn't luck, but it does seem like a bit of a long time to be able to have it just be luck. So I would like you to get very clear on what changed in your trading. And I would like you to get very clear at what is your state of mind, also emotions wise. Are you being less triggered? Like, look, there are different market environments. Everybody has their set of triggers, right? There could be currently in the past 4 months for you, BTO, less triggers. Your buttons haven't been pressed. You've been able to stay neutral. You've been able to stay disciplined because you aren't having your button pushed, right? And the market could change this next week and you will get all your buttons triggered. So this is the key. You want to be, okay, so BTO, okay, you are still here. I always come back and rewatch. Good. And Tina does too. That's great. I'm glad you guys do because, in the end, at the end, it's all in service to you guys. But BTO, that's my question. Like, take a look at what happened over these past 4 months because it is important that you know whether or not you just got lucky. It is important for you to be able to really get clear on what was different these past 4 months for you to potentially repeat it and or notice that you got lucky. One of the best quotes, and I wouldn't be surprised if I've not said this in every single conversation I've had with you guys on these lives, is something that Peter Brandt said in Jack Schwager's Unknown Market Wizards, which is a fabulous book, by the way. He said there's a difference between bad trades and losing trades. Can anybody guess what the difference is? All right, BTO, I'm going to look at your question or statement here. Stats show me cutting losses quicker, holding winners longer, and adding to winners. Yeah, BTO, I doubt that that's luck for 4 months. A day or two, a week or two, 4 months of seeing stats that tell you you're cutting losses quicker, you're holding winners longer. I think 4 months, I don't think it's just luck. If that's happening, here's my follow-up question. How come? How come? Search yourself, look back over these past 4 months. I want you to look at how come you're cutting losses quicker. How come you're letting winners go longer? Something changed for you. If that is the case, what changed for you? What happened in those moments when previously you didn't cut your loss? Previously, you didn't hold your winner. Get curious about what happened, what's happening now, what is helping you step into that place of letting go of the loss, not being attached, not trying to argue with reality, right? Something. The feeling of having a loss. Disgust is a strong feeling, and I want to stay away from it. Excellent. So that experience of having loss is a part, and the disgust that comes for you, right? That is a feeling now that you've identified and recognized. And so I want you to get curious about the clarity of having that disgust in the first place Where did that come from? That is part of this kind of like searching for the root of what changed in you, because you want to be able to hold on to a change in behavior. And if you don't recognize the change in behavior for yourself, and just label it luck, you're first of all not going to be able to pat yourself in the back, celebrate yourself, and potentially continue. Like for those who have had success, for those who have been able to change bad habits and make a shift for yourself and your trading, guys, you've got to celebrate that stuff. You've got to stop and acknowledge yourself. You've got to find a way to say, wow, good job, me, because that is gas in your tank. That is oxygen in your lungs. And you need that. You can't. It's so many times there. It's like you guys will only focus on what you do lousy, but you won't spend 5 freaking seconds on patting yourself on the back for what you did well. Like I'm not telling you to live in a place of self-congratulations like forever, but good Lord, would you please just give yourself a few minutes to be proud of yourself, reap the rewards, be happy, enjoy it. Like you want to enjoy it, guys. All right, BTO says the feeling comes from experiencing big losses when I allow loss to become bigger than needed. Good. That doesn't sound like luck to me, BTO. That sounds like you becoming aware of how awful it feels when you aren't a man or woman of your word, right? That's the key, guys. You've got to become men and women of your word. If you aren't your word, what are you, right? When we say, even to ourselves, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and you don't do it, you betray yourself. You completely demolish the trust with yourself. There is not a relationship you will ever have with anyone that is more important than the relationship you have with yourself. The way a lot of you guys talk to yourselves, the breaking of your word that you do to yourselves is not indicative of a really powerful relationship. So every time you say you're going to do something and you don't, you can feel it. You can feel, wow, I have betrayed myself to myself. And that's why it's so important to become a man or woman of your word. For your own self-respect, it's so important. And that to me, BTO, sounds like what you have begun to really tap into, is that the experience you have internally when you are not being your word is a discomfort you are no longer willing to experience. And I would say that is a great sign. And I'm so proud of you. And I want to pat you on the back and do a high five, a double high five. All right. A bad trade, not cutting, not sticking to a plan, risk or stop. A losing trade, sticking to risk, exit when the trade simply did not work as expected, since it is probability game. Good job. Good job at identifying exactly what the difference is. That is everything, guys. That is the difference. And so many times, MC Trading just nailed exactly what Brandt means by that quote. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is for you guys to know the difference. Unfortunately, there are a lot of traders out there who repeatedly take bad trades, and that is not the same as a losing trade. And there's a lot of traders out there who have losing trades and feel their gremlins make them feel like, really bad, as though the losing trade was a bad trade when it isn't. Like, that is so important for you guys to get, because every time you get angry at yourself, it's a cost. It's a cost. And that cost over time is just going to deplete your confidence and deplete your trust with yourself. every time you're not a man or woman of your word, you deplete the trust you have with yourself. All right, I have to take another sip. All right, BTO says, it's in 4 years, almost 5 of Realty Red to break even to now, profitable for a couple of months. BTO, 4 years, almost 5, not that long. And BTO, here's a question for you. And I want all of you to start to describe yourself this way, like be it on X, be it here. Whenever you guys say, I've been a trader for 4 years, almost 5, full-time or part-time, right? Big difference, right? Big difference. If BTO, I don't know, maybe you're full-time, but if you aren't, right? The way you just worded that, look at how that sounds, right? There's a difference. And you guys also need to realize how you measure yourself up against another trader in a Discord room or colleague or somebody that's, big and famous on X. You're not equally comparing yourselves. Infrequently is everything the same, right? A whole bunch of factors that you possibly never even know about is going on for them, and yet you're comparing yourself to them without having any clarity about the different things that could be in place for both of you. All right, Tom says you have actively put yourself in a position for luck to interact with you. Well said, Tom. Fantastic. Love that quote. That should be in a post-it, Tom. Keep that one handy, because that is exactly what's happening. When you're a man or woman of your word, you consistently put yourself on a path where luck opens, right? Like, what's that phrase about, like, the people that have like opportunities are the people that show up. Like, there's who's got this story? Gosh, I think I just had a conversation with him, on Twitter or something. Who was this? Oh, it was Jared Dillian, another good money book, which is called No Worries. Jared went for an interview. I think it was a Chicago trade. I think he went to a meeting for an interview. The interview didn't go well, guys. He was like leaving, and he was like, okay, I'm not going to get that job. But he didn't walk out. You know what he did? He hung out because, he had to pass for the day or for the interview. So he hung out on the trading floor because he was like, well, I'm not going to get that job. Maybe if I stay here, I'll meet somebody else. And sure enough, that's what happened. Some man threw a water bottle. It almost hit him in the head. The guy came over to apologize. And the guy said, hey, are you looking for a trading job? And Jared was like, yes, I am. Right? How did that happen? It happened because he was in it, right? He was smart enough to say, I'm not getting that interview job, so I'm going to stay on this floor because this is where I want to be, right? The same thing. Like, that's what Tom just spoke in that great quote, right? If you guys are being a trader who is a man or woman of their word, you do put yourself in a position for luck to actually visit you on occasion. All right. Tina's saying, good job, BTO. All right. Eric saying, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Time for change. Well, I hear that. Last Monday, 32% green trade. Today, a 1% loss. BTO, high five, brother. High five. So proud of you. Well done, you. Well done, you. That's right, Eric. Losing trades can be good trades. And that is the key. That is the key. Jared asks people in interviews if they are lucky. Tom, I didn't know he did that. That is so cool. I love it. I love it. All right. So let's with giving credit to Jared, let's ask all of you guys, just put in 1 or 2 words. Lucky or unlucky, right? I guess unlucky, that's 1 word too. So just 1 word, guys, just put in, like, I am going to say mine instead of typing it in. I am the luckiest SOB on the planet. I am so lucky, guys. And I know that I am lucky because I am always willing always willing to potentially embarrass myself, look like a fool. Like I'm not talking about self-sabotaging. I'm talking like doing these for God's sakes. I don't even know how long I've been doing them for, right? When I first started this, guys, I was like, this could go really bad. This could go so bad, and I am going to look like a complete idiot. I'm going to look like a complete fool. Like this was for me in the beginning, but I was like, you know what? So what? And that's something that I say a lot to you guys. Like those need to become, your favorite words. I'm not talking about being, irresponsible with your capital, guys. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like the loss, right? The over trading, right? In the face of a loss, because you don't want to be with the loss. Why? Because you feel foolish. Because you want to be a winner. Like I want you guys to start to be your ability to stop over trading, your ability to just cut those losses is completely dependent on your willingness to be wrong and foolish, incorrect, right? Embarrassed. Like it's okay to be wrong. I don't know if you've heard the news, but like you're human. You're going to be fallible your entire life. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how many years you've been a trader. You're going to make mistakes. The comfort with those mistakes is the key to this whole kingdom. Not taking it personally, not making it mean something, right? So yes, I'm sharing with you guys that I was worried, like when I first started these, like, what if I look foolish, right? But then, because I try to practice what I preach, I use my own tools with myself, and I'm like, so what? Right? I make a fool of myself. I do a couple, nobody comes, or maybe people come and are not nice to me or make fun of me. Like, so what? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, no big deal, right? Like, is the world gonna end? No. It's like, oh, that didn't work. Okay, so what? That's what I want you guys to start to get comfortable with. When there's a losing trade, when you were so sure it was going to happen, when you're like, oh my God, I really thought this was the one. I want you to start to get to the place where you guys can say, so what, right? Then you don't have a big charge around it. Then your whole sense of identity and your whole sense of value and your whole sense of worthiness is not all tied up in it, because it is not your worthiness. It is not your value. It is just, and how many times have you guys heard this, right? You could be technically right. And yet, for whatever reason, the trade goes against you, right? That's going to happen, guys, right? We've all seen The Big Short, right? We're all watching Barry in that movie. Like, we're not going to talk about what's going on for him now. We're just talking about that one movie, right? He is technically right. That housing crisis is coming. And if he ran out of capital, it wasn't going to matter, right? So he chose to stick with his trade, which I'm not even going to weigh in on. But I just want you guys to see, like, even though as the viewer, the person watching that movie, you're like, oh God, this guy is so correct. And yet he still could potentially lose. He didn't in the end, God bless him, but he could have. And that's what I want you guys to see. Is he brilliant? Yes. Was he very smart? Yes. Could he still potentially have lost everything? Yes. So if the genius, that Michael Burry is or was, like, it can happen to him, what makes you think, oh, you got to be the exception to that? Like, come on. Yes, MC Trading, the best loser wins. Hell yeah. So get used to that word and put it on your Post-it, guys. So what, right? The less attached you guys are, the better. You want to be coming from a place of neutrality. You want to be coming without your ego and your sense of identity collapsed with your trading. You want to become a man or woman of your word. You want to be a person who's able to objectively look at your triggers so that you can potentially not be triggered anymore. If you stop the judgment and you start to come from a space of curiosity and neutrality, you potentially are able to notice all the places you get hooked, all the things that hook you. Look, we all get hooked. We all have our triggers based on our childhood, based on our experiences, based on the relationships we have. Everybody has like a scar or multiple scars. Everybody has a soft spot. Everybody has like that place where one person is just present and we're like, right? The market is going to find all of your triggers, guys. It's going to hold a mirror up to you that's going to it's going to force you, you to be with all these triggers unless you close your eyes to it, refuse to see it, and keep making the same mistakes over and over again until, honestly, you don't have capital to trade another day. Like, because that's what's going to happen. So you can deal with the discomfort now, or you can deal with a much bigger discomfort later. Choice is yours. Luke Trader says, I just hate losses and it triggers everything, mainly oversizing and revenge. Good for you, Luke Trader. I'm proud of you for saying that. That's a big deal. Now, right now, because you just typed this in, I want you to just, I don't know if you've been here the whole time, but I want you to just check in with physically how you feel, right? I want you to check in with what happens in your body when you contemplate that loss, right? Because you said it triggers everything. So right this second, if you're willing to, I don't have a lot of time because I have to shut it down, but I want to do this with you because you just put this in. I want you to just kind of take the elevator from your head down into your body if you're willing to. If you're in a position, to close your eyes, I would do it. So I want you to close your eyes. Anybody else wants to do this, do it because you might as well, right? Close your eyes, guys. And I want you to just take that metaphoric elevator from your brain into the physicality of your body. I want you to feel, Luke, where loss hits, right? Maybe it's your chest. Maybe it's your belly. Maybe it's your shoulders. There's a contraction physically happening to you when loss occurs for you. I want you to tune into that if you're willing to. And if you aren't, it's okay. But this is what I would recommend everybody does, because each of us has a physical experience, a physical relationship, if you will, to loss. For some, it is very triggering. Likely that's the case for you, Luke. So what is going on there is likely an old cut, right? An old wound where loss meant something. There was an incident or incidents likely where when you experienced loss, you paid a very high price. Cynthia says she feels it in her gut. BTO says, okay, belly and chest. Good, Luke. Well done. Okay, so Luke, I want you to now connect to the belly and chest, and whoever is listening, wherever you guys feel it, connect to that spot. And here's the not fun part. I want you to make it worse. I want you to make it louder, Luke. I want you to turn the volume up on it. And it could become to the point where you're like, Kim, I can't stay with this. That's okay. You don't have to. But take yourself, if you are willing, to the edge of that discomfort. Notice how worse it gets. Notice the contraction, how much stronger it gets. Notice how probably your breath has started to change. Your eyes have probably dilated. I bet your heart's moving faster. I bet you're sweating, right? This is you experiencing what happens when there's a loss, but it's not happening in real time now, but you are letting your body experience it as if you're in real time. And this is how all of us start to transcend these hard to be with experiences. So Luke, if you're still with me, anybody else, you can apply it to the spot in your body. I want you to notice as you sit in it, guys, right? There's two questions. What's happening now? And the second question is, can you be with it? That's what I'm going to ask you, Luke. Can you be with it? Not forever, just for this moment, just for a little bit longer, like maybe 30 seconds to a minute. If you can be with it, Luke, then what I'm wanting you to do is to just notice what comes up in that intensity. Could be a memory, could be a moment from the past that you're like, I know this feeling. So that's the question, Luke. Do you know this feeling? Is this familiar? Is this, tightness and or this cannot be with feeling in your belly chest? Do you know this feeling? How long have you known this feeling for? When did you first have this feeling? Likely it's going to be many years ago, likely decades ago. If, Luke, you can, you might just be having an experience and not able to type in the chat box, and that's okay. But that is what I want you to contemplate. And maybe, Luke, after this conversation ends, you take yourself back to this experience. What everybody, you're all hopefully doing right now is somatic work. What does somatic mean? It means being in the body. For all of us, each of us have emotions that are inside of our body that we have yet to allow ourselves to feel. And if we are not allowing ourselves to feel, like this is not fun, what I've asked Luke to do, right? It's not fun to be with that trigger. And yet, guys, it's the only way you're going to ever be free of it. You and that feeling are kind of like intricately tied together until you feel it, until you let yourself process it all the way through. So Cynthia's saying to this point is something very familiar. There you go. Like for everyone, you're going to discover likely the biggest triggers you guys have are this relationship to something that probably goes way back and way you can, okay, Luke. So I'm not sure what okay means, but so I'm just curious, Luke, for right this moment, I want you to just allow yourself to come out of this experience with your body. Do what you can to kind of acknowledge your body for joining you in this process, right? You just did something different. You just allowed yourself to be with a feeling. And I'm kind of curious, Luke, if there was any kind of shift in the intensity as you allowed yourself to just feel it. What I have, noticed for myself and for others is when we start to feel these feelings, they shift, they will change. Maybe it's loosening, maybe it's like a decompression, not completely, one and done is rare. Often this experience, which I call emotional non-resistance, is a practice that, especially for really traumatic experiences, traumatic events, which loss can be traumatic depending on where and how we experience loss for the first time. Or there could have been a moment in her life when the loss happened that was incredibly debilitating to any of us. So what I want you to think about, Luke, is if there was a shift in any way over this experience just now in your body, then that, and if there wasn't, it's okay too. But this practice, guys, and Luke, for you, this is what I would point you towards. I would point you towards this practice. I'm going to mention 2 books. I'm going to mention 2 teachers of mine that taught me how to do this. This particular exercise, life-changing for me, okay? I have a lot of trauma from my childhood, a very unusual life, and this particular practice, my book, Transforming Wall Street, I speak to 5 practices. This is one of those 5. Of all those practices, this particular practice was absolutely life-changing for me. So I can't encourage you guys to do this enough, because it is going to facilitate you being able to unhook yourself from the trigger. All right, Luke says, yes, I can realize this is complete irrational stupidity. What I do after, next time I'll try not to do, but to feel. Here, Luke, here's the thing. Don't say that about yourself. That is your gremlin talking, okay? I want you to get that book. If you didn't hear me earlier, Taming Your Gremlin, right? There's nothing irrational about what is happening for you. There's nothing stupid about what's happening for you. All of us human beings experience a situation, let's just say a loss, right? And we are built, guys, we are built to survive, okay? So you think about, Luke, I don't know when this first, you experienced this loss, the first loss of your life, right? Of your life, not of your trading, right? Each of us is going into autopilot to survive whatever we go through in our childhood. That is your genius, Luke, right? Because at some point, something happened and the way you handled it was fucking genius. Why? Because you are still freaking here. If you didn't do what you did back then to navigate it, you wouldn't be here. So I want you to see this as a incredibly, your whole system, body, a way of trying to cope is genius. It served you once. And this is for everyone listening. Whatever coping mechanisms potentially cost you guys today once served you, once saved you, once helped you get through. It's just now, it's no longer serving you. So don't make yourself wrong, Luke. I want you to get that this has ultimately got you through one particular period of your life, but now it potentially costs you. And if it is costing you, then you're going to need to meet yourself with compassion, not with judgment, not with calling yourself names. That is your gremlin talking. You want to get curious about what happened that is so hard for you to experience loss, because that is going to be able to help you go back and get unhooked from it. But let me say this. It's not going to take 5 minutes. I wish it would, but it doesn't. And, I still have to practice this, guys, based on the shit, that I went through in my childhood. So this is a practice, right? You don't do it and you're done. You want to just get curious what the triggers are for you. For anybody listening, everybody has their triggers. You guys want to start to learn how to go into the body. Okay, here are the 2 people I wanted to speak to. Raphael Kushner, he was also on my podcast, guys. Go watch that interview. Luke, go watch that interview. Raphael Kushner on the Wall Street Coach podcast. Watch that, because he's going to walk you through, similar to what I just did now, And he has a couple of books. Also, Peter Levine. I'd love to have him on my podcast, but I haven't succeeded at getting him on. Peter Levine wrote a book too that I'm going to recommend to you, Luke, and everybody, of course, Waking the Tiger. And that book talks about how the reason animals are in a life and death situation every single day, right? But they don't have trauma. Why? Because they tremor and tremble and shake out the life and death chase. If they get to live, right, they will sit behind a bush and literally shake off the horrific close call before they return to their herd. Now, think about us humans, right? How many of us have gone through traumatic events? How many of us have gone through, incredibly challenging situations? And what are we told to do? Right? We're usually told to get over it. We're guys, especially, like, stop being a pussy, right? Here's some booze. Here's a drug. Here's something else to distract yourself with. Infrequently are any of us encouraged to feel it. Infrequently are any of us encouraged to discharge it. And yet, guys, and this is what Levine taught me, every emotion that you've ever had, that you have shut off, that you have stopped, that you have interrupted, that you have cut yourself off from, is living inside your body. How do you like that? Imagine all the hard to be feelings that you have never let yourself feel ever. They don't go away, guys. They stay in there. Is it any wonder where disease and illness comes from, guys? Like, all of those feelings, the only way they discharge is we feel them. And that's the other thing I'm going to say, Luke, because I suspect that you possibly are coming from this place of, like, maybe I can think my way out of these feelings. Maybe I can just logically, let myself talk myself out of these feelings. You can't. The only way feelings get discharged, guys, is feeling them. Wish there was a shortcut. Wish you could think your way out of them. You can't. So notice the tendency, I just want to get this over with. Yeah, no kidding. It sucks, right? And you need to go into the feeling. Most of us go back to these feelings superficially, right? It's like, oh, yeah, I remember that happening with so and so and so. But we're feeling is sort of at a superficial level. Yeah, you're an engineer. Yeah. So Luke, you're always kind of going to logic, right? That's the place that, likely served you. Hell, it served me, right? I was not going to get any of my needs met. Whatever I was feeling as a kid was not going to matter to my caretakers. It was all about them. Their needs had to be tended to. I got the memo. I'm a smart girl, even as a little girl. I was like, okay, I see how this works here. I have to cut myself off from my needs because they're not going to get met here. And who the hell wants to be with that disappointment over and over and over again? So instead, I'll just cut myself off from needing. I'll just cut myself off from all these shitty feelings and I'll numb myself out. And guess where I'll go? The one place I probably can stay safe, up here. Go to my mind. Go to my thinking, right? That's where I'll spend my time instead. Because that doesn't hurt, right? That doesn't feel like shit. That doesn't make me feel worthless, right? So that's where I went, right? I wanted to be an architect for a little while, Luke. I didn't become one, but I'm just trying to say, guys, you don't have to even be an engineer, guys. Like, most of you are probably going into your thinking. And that is also part of the culture we live in, right? We are constantly, repeatedly told that, it's all about the left hand hemisphere of our brain, right? The right hand hemisphere, doesn't need to be, regarded. Especially traders think that way. Engineers, right? Actually, I'd like everybody to go to my X handle, because I just tweeted out before this, 2 hours ago, I put out a tweet from Tom Morgan. Go look at that. I just asked them today if we can do an X space. Go listen. It's a 5-minute talk. It's a 20-minute talk too, but he cut it down to 5 minutes. Luke, I want you to go watch that talk. Tom Morgan, he's speaking about a gentleman, one of his teachers, Ian McGilchrist, who is talking about how all of us are paying a huge price because the culture, the world consistently emphasizes the left hemisphere brain, right? The logical part of the brain. And completely what that's doing is robbing us even of the left hemisphere's capability, because the right hemisphere is part of what helps our left hemisphere work. So it's a great talk. It's a short talk, but I suspect that will serve a lot of people in this room, including you, Luke. Okay, I gotta go. BTO says, I thought I was crazy putting in so much time into trading, even after I was losing trading. A trader. Look, BTO, crazy is relative, right? You have to define what crazy is. And this is the thing. You want to make sure it isn't your interceptor who is defining this, right? Because it's possibly your interceptor created this criteria that is not based on reality. So consider that. All right, Luke Trader says, I'll ask you for the podcast and readings later by DM. No problem. My English for names is not very good. No problem. Tom Morgan. That's it. Tom Morgan. Just go check out my Twitter handle, Luke. You're going to see it. It's right there. Okay, same here, BTO. My taxman said I'd be better off going to the casino. Well, that's not good, Tina. All right, last sales pitch, guys. Luke Trader, you are great yourself. I'm so glad you were here. Thank you for bringing this up, because it got the conversation down a very powerful direction, and I'm very glad to speak about that. And I think guys saw Cynthia maybe ask what this is called. So I call it emotional non-resistance. Raphael Kushner, he would call it emotional connection. Peter Levine would call it, what does Levine call it? You know, he calls it somatic work, right? So anyway, you guys are awesome. I'm so proud of you. You guys are like, you're in it to win it, guys. It's so obvious. I think you guys are just phenomenal. And I just love your, dedication and willingness to be, with these this is a hard gig, guys. Being a trader, it's like, you guys have signed up for the most difficult job in the world. So good job, all of you. All right, there it is, my small group coaching. Check it out. 6 weeks. It starts April 18th. I'd love to have some of you who are in this space come to it, because I think you'll get so much out of it. We get really personal, get really deep. It's a small, nice, intimate group. And the traders who have come so far, they have told me some really special things that have happened for them and their trading. So I hope you'll consider it. All right. I love you guys. You're awesome. In Hawaii, we say ahui ho. Ahui ho means until we meet again.